I'm very pleased to introduce our next speakers, Willem Vermoost and Felix Poulin, who are going to be talking about the new generation of the EBU pyramid, some stuff that's hot off the press and certainly going to be informative. So take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you, Wes. Can you hear me well? The back, yeah? It's kind of breaking the ice of this session, and very good to be here. After a couple of years, we will present the latest updates to the EBU pyramid. Who is aware of the EBU pyramid? Have you seen that? You know about it? Yeah? Nothing new? Okay. So we did a refresh. We will share that with you. First of all, we wanted to go back in time a little bit to talk about what was behind us that bring us here today. And when we look at the timeline, when we do the exercise, we see there's a lot of things that happened in the last years. 2015, this is where we put together the JTNM reference architecture. This kind of started the whole ball of standards. What do we need? And there was a first publication by the VSF on the TR03, transport of uncompressed elementary streams, that become later 2110, SMPT ST2110. And some projects started, like BBC Cardiff project started construction at that time. Some proof of concept, VRT Live IP, ISO4 was published. There was some big demonstration. It was still an era where there was a diversity of options on the market before ST2110. So there was this moment where we had to kind of converge and identify what's the common ground. JTNM roadmap, also to try to have a view on the evolution of the future. Willem, you want to continue?
It's taped, sorry. I need to stick it here.
We need to talk louder.
Yeah. Oh, I pushed a little bit too far. Let's go back. Okay, so we combined 2 years together, otherwise it would be really a long way running through the timeline. So 2016, 2018, what did happen? Well, 2017, of course, 2110 was published. So that's a real key moment in time, I would say. But then the year after, you see the highlights here on the top. It's 2110 published, but suddenly users were asking for, hey guys, 2110, that's not enough. We need to have a full stack solution. So this is why you see things popping up here on the right-hand side. And meanwhile, in Europe, buildings are being constructed, like SRF in Zurich, the BBC Wales Cardiff project. I think at this stage, they got the keys to the building, so they could start do their construction. Now, moving on in time, 2019, 2020, well, that's really the year where we start to improve the maturity. By getting into the JTNM tested, I think the first event of JTNM tested started in 2019 under guidance of Ievgen Kostiukevych. And I think EBU list and all the good stuff came out. You see also Canada in Montreal, the building, that took a lot of effort and gave us a lot of feedback. And it's this feedback that made us look into the pyramid. Now, improved maturity of solution, that's a certain thing that is dear to us, of course. We have a lot of members at EBU that were going to build new buildings. They were going to invest a lot of money into technology, so of course it had to be mature. Maybe Felix, you can present the next.
This one? Okay. Yes. I'll hack a little bit the kit. If I take that in my hand, I'll be with this wire. Check 1, 2. Better. 2021, mainly what we have here, intro to live remote production 2022. We can mention JTNM program and the CBC project went on air with radio at that time. So why do we need a pyramid? It became clear once ST2110 was published that the transport layer was addressed, but there was a number of technology that you need to have around ST2110 really to do a large-scale facility. So the pyramid, it's a wish list from the early adopters, what they want to see in a product to be able to build, manage over time a large-scale facility, to discuss requirements with the vendor, to bring the industry towards that, that wish list that was built from experience. It's a wide user consensus and also there to break the argument when you meet a provider that you're the only clients asking for something where you have a large group of users that put their requirements together. So the different versions, the first version of the pyramid was published in 2018, and you see the evolution in terms of colors. 2020 revision, there was some improvement at the top of the layer. It's still a lot of work at the bottom of the layer. We will go through the different layers to see what they are in. And the new version, there was a little gap in time. There was some sanitary problems that happened over time. And we just released an update of the pyramid. We'll go layer by layer. Willem.
Right. This is something I learned from Ievgen. It normally says, don't delay, download today. There's a tech report of EBU, Tech 371, and that actually has all the details you need to know. This is just a high-level picture, right? But Tech 3371 has all the details. So if you download the report, you have all the details. This is the summary. So 2110, it's necessary to build your full facility, but it's not enough. It's not sufficient in order for you to build a fully fledged facility up and running. You need something more. This is why, of course, we have the pyramid, and it looks a little bit like this. You probably see that there's a change throughout the years, and we'll go now to all the details. So what has changed? Well, there are some general principles, of course. It should be implementable in software. This is what we said from the beginning. FPGAs, that's not our end goal. We should be able to go to software. Otherwise, the move to IP, that's a little bit tricky, right? So it should be based on IT standards and best practices. Otherwise, you'll never be able to move in full software or containerizing your solutions. Use open standards. We have a definition for open standards. But what did change, and it looks like a tiny, tiny detail, it's use semantic versioning. And while doing the JTNM tested, we saw that all those vendors have, of course, different versioning systems. But this is interesting. This versioning system tells you if you change the major version, then you need to rethink if the APIs are still compatible. And this gives you immediate a good glance at what you should be testing when you're building. Now, the first tip of the pyramid, that's been green for a while, but we added some little bits left and right, because of course, you know, -22 is out. Now, instead of just using uncompressed, we can use compressed as well. So -22, that's added for compressed. There's still the level B audio, that's a contribution from CBC as well, because they said, well, level C, we don't need it. Level B audio is good enough. Of course, we need stream protection with -7, but there's a small attribute here called asynchronous receivers. That's really a key element that we need moving forward into production. So, Felix, you want to take the next part of the puzzle?
The layer on time in sync, and if you are used to the pyramid, you'll remark a little difference is we kind of went backward with adding some red in there, and we'll explain why is that. So time in sync, more or less in terms of PTP, SMT profiles, it's mature, it's being tested repeatedly in JTNM tested, it's working. There's some item in the performance that are like the resiliency to endpoints when you lose PTP momentarily, that needs sometimes to be worked for by some vendor. So there's still improvements, but overall you can build a facility with PTP, it's working. There's one item that was a promise at the beginning of 2110 when we say we will separate the essence and we will carry them separately, is the synchronization between the different essence, audio to video, the lip sync issue. And this was already there in the pyramid previously, that there was a wish that there's a way in the standard, in the systems to deal with this. But 2110 at that point was not offering any options to really deal with it. It has to be a manual process. When you build your plant, you need to time your plant, to align your plant, include delays, like we were used to do with SDI. Now, there was a publication of 2110 recently, and at the end of 2022, a revision of 2110-10. It has provisions in the standard to allow time preservation of the timestamp throughout the chain. So you can now use the timestamp as a way to realign audio and video that goes through different steps. The challenge in there, and that's why there's some red in there, is we need adoption, and we need a wide adoption by the industry to really benefit from that feature. So this will stay red until there's a good number of vendors implementing that, and that's quite new. So it's a good question to ask your vendor, are you aware of this new addition in 2110-10, and will you support that in your roadmap? Operational control, this layer got even greener. We could witness in the last year a bigger adoption, a growth in adoption in NMOS. Last JTNM tested, for example, we had 87% of all the ST2110 devices that were doing ISO 4 and ISO 5 for discovery, registration, and connection management. So in terms of adoption, there's really a momentum. There's still work to be done on the device control capabilities. The pyramid asked for an open method, but until now was not very explicit about what this open method could be. There's a number of options on the market that can be used. Now, NMOS is working, and the AMWA is working actively to develop IS-12 and MSO5 that will fulfill that layer of device control in the same technology as the other NMOS parts. So leveraging the overall NMOS adoption. So now it's indicated here. It's not yet a specification that is available. It will be published most likely by IBC. But it's progressing very well. It's already prototyped by many implementations. So it's getting there. It's an awareness at this stage that is coming. On the configuration monitoring side, there was no change in terms of adoption. And we consulted amongst a number of implementers. This is probably the next layer where the vendors have to address. So it's the old notion of that the device can be configurable by an open method. So there's not one that is specific. There's a list of possible open method, being open config, different options using MQTT. Also, AMWA is thinking about a way to do that, but at least you need to have a way that you can integrate a device and controlling it, because at large scale, there's so many parameters, there's so many possibilities that it's not a thing that you want to configure each of your device by hand and especially maintain that over time. So you need hooks in your device for monitoring, configuration of the parameters of the device.
Now there's an interesting change you might notice here, and there's a hint of yellow in the bottom layer. The hint of yellow, we've seen this actually during JTNM Tested, and maybe if you come back to the IP Showcase and you look at the presentation about JTNM Tested, there will be a slide in there, and you see that a few of the boxes that we did test didn't have any vulnerability. A lot of them still have. Now, that's a little bit a tricky thing to say, because security, that's not just the vendor, that's the user as well. So there's a combination between the user that needs to go with authentication and that sort of things, and there's of course the vendor that needs to deliver you a box where, for instance, there's no email server running if it doesn't need to be running. So those are the details. So of course there's a little bit of low attention at this stage, because it doesn't give you any functionality. Vendors do want to vend you functionality. A user wants to get functionality. And of course, security is spending a lot of money, but it brings down the risk. And you need to be sure to bring down the risk to keep your facility up and running. So that's very interesting. I should mention the small thing on the side here. We thought everybody knows the pyramid, but it's good to stress out that the green means it's widely available for you to go to the market and get that piece of kit. It's partially available, the yellow part. So this is why we have slides on the security bit. And the red means rarely available. So is it good? Well, it's improving, let's say. But what we should say, there's a wide consensus in the industry, as well with NABA, the North American Broadcast Association, the WBU, JTNM, AMWA, SEMTI, VSF. They all say, yeah, we recognize this pyramid and this is probably the way to go. Now, if you go to the EBU website and you just type tech.ebu.ch/pyramid, I know it's a mouthful, but /pyramid, you can remember this, I guess. Then you have the official slide. And the official slide looks like this. So if you want to use this in your tendering process, then download the slide, use it as is. Please don't change a bit, because this is something that people will recognize at the end. So that's the very important thing. So maybe I'll hand it back to Felix for the wrap-up.
So the most important thing, I guess, to remind is there's a lot of red, and it might send a signal that technology is not necessarily mature enough to do anything with it. So I can prove you that a 2110 facility can work. We have one in Montreal that is on the air. It's in operation. There's many more on the market that have come up with a project of that size. The red and the yellow really will tell you where you will have to put the most of your effort, because the industry is still working on this. So the interoperability of the transport is going well. Probably less time you have to spend in testing like we had to do at the beginning a few years ago. But then in the integration part, the configuration and monitoring, automation, for example, and the security, this is where the energy needs to be put. So when the pyramid is all green, it will more or less say it's mature as SDI technology that you know and is working. This will certainly take a few more years to get to a full green pyramid. But there's a strong progression, and also I think by having an open conversation with the vendors, we'll get there. that was it.